Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here. This is the flyover for the new Fox Run disc golf course at Bell Park. A couple things before we get started. First of all, you'll notice that this video sometimes is a little dark, sometimes it's washed out. This drone's kind of getting long in the tooth. It's been crashed a handful of times, and honestly, the camera's just not as good as it used to be. I'm not sure if that's because of the lens or what, but anyways, I think it's probably good enough for folks who can't make it out to be able to see the course and see the lines. Second thing, I am not the world's best drone flyer. You'll notice that it's pretty slow and awkward at points, but again, that's not too terribly bad. And last but not least, you'll also notice the grass is pretty high here. We've had quite a bit of rain lately, and it's been tough for the Parks Department to get out and mow this course. But rest assured, they'll get it mowed soon, and for certain, they'll have it mowed before Battle at Bell Park. All right, we'll start here on hole one, 321 feet, par three, downhill. Plays considerably less than 321. Before I actually start the flyover, I'm going to show you a couple lines that I didn't actually fly. First of all, there's a big high hyzer around this tree. You can throw a nice hyzer over the top and drop it down in there. Also, you cannot see the basket from the tee. You can see these two trees right here, this straight tree and this one that kind of curves off to the right a little bit. Those two trees right there are just past the basket. So if you'll aim at those trees, that'll be a good aiming point. Another shot that I didn't fly is the overhand shot. If you have a pretty good overhand, you can throw an overhand over these trees and drop it down in there. But that is a pretty big shot. Now, for the intended line. Basically, the intended line is something very straight. Downhill, there's a low ceiling here. This tree is the tree that kind of catches your eye on the tee. It's not center of the fairway. It's just kind of to the right-hand side of the fairway. If you miss this tree one side or the other with a straight flying disc, that's a really good shot. But it's really the branches on this tree that kind of create the ceiling. It's a pretty specific shot. You know, like I said, it's considerably downhill, low ceiling, very straight. Test your skills right off the bat. These two trees right here are the ones that I was talking about. That's your aiming point. If you were to throw one dead straight, hit those two trees, and drop straight down, you'd be inside 20 feet. Good look at birdie. You can see over here, this is the tee pad for hole two. You'll see this guy coming up, this poor guy, he's playing Bell Park. Bell Park is over here on the left, and this is hole 14. If you're familiar with it, there's the woods there on the right-hand side. He threw a shot that apparently turned over into those woods, and he's searching for his disc. But there you go. That's hole one. All right, hole two, 209 feet, par three. This is one of the shorter holes on the course, but it's a pretty interesting hole. I flew the kind of flex line, lefty flex line or forehand flex line. However, before we get started, I'll show you a couple other lines here. This tree is kind of tall, but you can throw a big high hyzer over that tree and drop it down. This is another one. You can see the basket, but not just right from the tee. You kind of have to step off over here to the right to be able to see the basket. So you can throw a big high hyzer over there, fairly short hole, still playing downhill. There's also, this is a really small hole, and if the grass was mowed, you could throw a low skipping shot that could skip into that basket, but boy, that's a pretty specific hole that you have to hit. I think the intended line, though, and the one that I flew, is either a lefty kind of flexing, turnover flexing line or a forehand. So if you throw a forehand, right around here is something fairly stable. Bring it around here and then let it flex back out towards the basket. I think that's probably the intended shot. There's enough trees. Like I said, this is a very short hole, but there's enough trees on this hole that it's not a guaranteed birdie. I mean, it's a very specific line to hit. But yeah, if you can get one to flex, you know, kind of back right around in here, you should have a pretty good look at birdie. Hole three's tee pad is back over off to the left, and you can see hole 16's basket over here. Right there, that's hole 16's basket. Hole three, 309 feet, par three. This is yet another hole that you can't see the basket from the tee. It is a dog leg left. I'm going to go over a couple of routes that I didn't fly the drone on before I do the intended path. So there's a couple of holes up here high that you could throw a big high hyzer and maybe possibly get to the basket. But man, that's a really tight fairway over there on both the right and left hand side. So you could easily get yourself in trouble. There's also an overhand shot right here. However, like I said in hole one, Battle at Bell Park is literally right behind this tee. Hole 15 plays right behind this tee. So that means hole 16's tee box is basically just over here off in the woods. So if you throw an overhand shot and it doesn't go where you intended, it could easily drop down on hole 16's tee box, and they'd have no idea something was coming at them. For that reason, I believe we will probably put a Mando on one of these trees over here to go right of that so we can protect Battle or Bell Park's 16's tee pad. However, the intended path is right through here. What the idea was to throw a low skipping shot that basically skips right in this vicinity out to the left. I think the mistake that a lot of people will make off of this tee pad is throwing it a little bit long. And when you throw it a little bit long, you're going to be stuck. You won't have any way to get to the basket. Just for reference, this is hole 16's basket over here. But yeah, if you throw a nice little skip shot and land right around in there, hopefully you can get a straight skip and you can get up pretty close to C1, probably somewhere inside C2. I've seen a handful of shots get up, pretty close to C1. But like I mentioned, the rough on this one, especially on the left-hand side, is really thick. The stuff on the right's not quite as bad, but it's still pretty thick as well. So accuracy is paramount on this hole. But you can possibly get it up, somewhere around in this vicinity and have a decent putt at the basket. I think probably most people would be playing this hole for a 3. Hole 16's tee pad is right there, and our next tee pad, hole 4, is right there. Hole 4, 248 feet, par 3. You'll notice this is the first video that the lighting is kind of low on the drone. Also, this is the first video where you can see the basket directly from the tee. So 248 feet, you can notice right off the tee here, these sets of trees, those are the trees that kind of seem to get hit the most. Those are the ones you're trying to miss. So if you're throwing a backhand, you're trying to miss these trees, the tendency is to push over here to the right. Sets up pretty nice for a forehand, though. You can kind of throw a forehand a little bit of a turnover there, flying straight after it turns initially off the tee. Get it to fly straight. Accuracy is key on this hole. You can see on both sides of the fairway, the rough is pretty rough. But if you can keep one in the fairway, fairly easy birdie. Like I said, it seems the tendency is to either hit those trees back on the left and bounce into the left rough, or push a little too far right and get into that rough. Hole 5's tee pad is right there. Hole 5, 315 feet, par 3. This one is a pretty tough hole, I think. It's probably the toughest hole that we've seen so far. I think it sets up better for either a forehand or a lefty backhand. If you're throwing the righty backhand, you're trying to kind of keep it on the inside of the left fairway there and just kind of slowly drifting to the right. The tendency is those trees are pretty prominent off the tee. The tendency is to miss those trees and then push or turn over too far to the right. But if you can miss those trees and you can keep one kind of flowing up the left-hand side of the fairway there, you should have a fairly good look at birdie. The fairway is mostly uphill for about 75% of the flight. It's uphill to right about here, and then it comes back downhill. Yeah, fairly straightforward. Play plays a little longer. It's 315 feet. Like I said, I think it sets up better for a lefty or a forehand shot than a righty backhand. Hole 6's tee pad is right here. Hole 15's tee pad is right there. Hole 6, 191 feet, par 3. This is the shortest hole on the course. It's a little downhill shot. The intended line is to throw a forehand, kind of flexing around this tree and then flexing back in towards the basket there. You can throw the straight at it shot. There is obviously a little gap right here, but the bigger hole is to come around through here. This used to be nothing but solid vines, kind of cut that cleared out. So it does create a little bit of a hole right here. Fairly straightforward. If you get caught up into these trees right here, you're going to have a long C2 or C3 look. But as long as you miss those trees, you should have a pretty good look at birdie. Hole 7's tee pad is right there. 7, 253 feet, par 3. This hole tends to play better for a forehand or a backhand turnover. Fairly straightforward. It's a little bit of a low ceiling created by these trees right here. Just a nice little turnover. Hopefully you miss these trees, which are inside C1. If you miss those trees, you can park this basket pretty well. This right here is hole 11's tee pad, and that's hole 8's tee pad. Hole 8, 243 feet, par 3. This is another one that has a little bit of a low ceiling created by these branches right here, but this is a pretty standard hyzer shot around the way. You don't want to be over here on the left. There's some pretty nasty stickers and whatnot over here, and this big group of brush keeps you from being able to see the basket. But you'll be throwing a hyzer shot. You'll want to aim at these trees. If you miss these trees either side on a hyzer, you're going to be right next to the basket. Should be noted that number 10's basket is right up here on the right-hand side. You can see that basket from the tee, but that's not the one you're throwing at. You cannot see this basket from the tee unless you step out to the right. But nice little hyzer. Hopefully drop it right down there by the basket for an easy birdie. This right here is number 9's tee pad. Hole 9, 291 feet, par 3. This hole plays way uphill, plays way longer than 291 feet, and it plays even longer because of the low ceiling. It's hard to get any height on this one to get all the way up there. I suppose some of the really big arms may be able to throw up over the trees, but the intended line here is basically straight up the gut. If you're throwing a righty backhand, you're trying to miss this tree, and it's kind of a theme on this course. When you try to miss this tree, you tend to push it a little bit too far right. But if you can hug the left-hand side of the fairway there, uphill, with a pretty powerful shot, you can get all the way up there to the basket. This is going to be a splash pad eventually, and I believe we'll probably put an OB line right here along this dirt here to keep people out of the splash pad and parking lot over here. Hole 10's fairway is back down here on your right-hand side, and you'll see hole 10's tee box right there. But there's a lot of trees in between these two holes. It'd be pretty tough to get into each other's fairway. Pretty guarded green here, especially if you get a little long. Hole 10, 263 feet, par 3. We're going back down the hill. We're just on the other side of hole 9's fairway. Right off the tee, you can't see the basket, but the basket is basically straight down through these trees right here. There looks like there's a righty backhand line. However, that line's pretty tough. It's tough because there's just so many trees down there. These are the trees that kind of separate 9 and 10. You can get one down there, pretty close to C1, but I don't know that you can get one all the way to C1 on this line. Maybe so. I think the intended line, though, is a forehand flex down the hill here. So a forehand, something with a little bit of stability down here, and hopefully flex back to the right right before you hit these group of trees. Pretty standard to not get one pushed over far enough and hit these trees here, or get one a little too far and hit those trees there. Again, a low ceiling. That's another theme on this course is elevation and low ceilings, either uphill or downhill with a low ceiling. Creates very specific shots. But anyways, you get one to flex back down here. Really cool area for the green with these rocks and the trees that are surrounding it. This is another one where we first put in the thorns were just brutal, just sheets and walls of thorns. We got it all cleared out for you. This rock formation by the basket is pretty cool. Hole 11's tee box is back over to your left hand side here, and that is hole 8's basket. Hole 11, 435 feet. This is the first par 4 on the course. I'll apologize. This is one of the worst videos as far as the darkness goes. The intended line on this one is basically a pretty straight shot. This is an uphill shot. And basically, you're just trying to throw something really straight up here. And the video gets better, lighter here as we go along. But basically, you can see these two trees off the tee, and you can see this grouping of trees off the tee. And so, what you're really trying to do is land something in this vicinity, and then you'll have a nice shot to the basket over on the right hand side. There is this kind of fake fairway that kind of happened naturally. If you get one, pushed a little too far right, you will have a shot at the basket kind of on this inside line. Anything off the fairway on this hole is really bad, really rough stuff on either side. But like I said, if you can get something to land right here, you'll have a nice, easy shot into the basket. Hole 12's tee pad is right here. And here's our basket. So yeah, if you get something laying right here, throw a nice little upshot. It's a pretty well guarded basket. The opening is right here. So if you're on that inside line and you're trying to throw up, it's a way tougher line. There's way more trees to deal with, but you can get something up there. Hole 14's basket is just past this one, right up in this vicinity, and that's your other par 4 too. Hole 12, 223 feet, par 3. This does plays uphill, so it plays longer than the numbers suggest. You'll notice here it's way brighter. I flew this course twice, and one time was too washed, and the other time was too dark. This is one of the ones where it's a little bright, a little washed out, but I think it was better than the dark one. So like I said, 223 feet, it plays uphill. It's a pretty low ceiling created by those branches and some branches up here. This tree right here is kind of the prominent one off the tee box that you're trying to miss. It's a fairly straight shot, maybe just a tad bit of a turnover to the right. But if you miss those trees in the fairway, this is probably one of the easier birdies on the course. Hole 13's tee pad is back to the right. Hole 13, 264 feet, par 3. We went back to the watched video on this one because the dark one was just way too dark. So right off the tee, you'll notice a nice skinny gap with a low ceiling, trying to make this gap with either a forehand or a turnover shot, trying to miss this tree in the middle of the fairway. You can miss it to one side or the other. While the disc is turning to the right, you should have a pretty good look at birdie. Please note that hole 17's tee box is right here. The next tee box that you're trying to get to, hole 14, is way over on the right, so don't confuse that tee box. Hole 14 will be over there. Hole 14, 409 feet, par 4. The intended flight on this one is down through here. However, before we start flying, I am going to tell you guys about a pretty cool shot that I've seen some people throw up here in this gap. If you throw a really high turnover shot with something, I guess maybe slightly stable that will flex back and drop, the hole, again, you can't see it at par 4 and it's a big dog leg left, but the basket is like right here. So if you can get one to flex back over and then drop, pretty cool shot. I think we're probably going to end up putting a Mando on this tree to keep everybody going right. And the reason for that is if you throw this shot and it doesn't turn over, 15's fairway is over in this area. So it's another one of those kind of like hole 3, where if this thing doesn't turn over, it drops over in 15's fairway. Somebody in 15's fairway is liable to get hurt, and they'd have no idea that this is coming to them. It just drop out of the sky. So, hole 14, 409 feet, par 4. The goal here is to throw, we got a low ceiling, just something pretty straight down here. You can either throw like maybe a putter or something like that down here trying to, for a placement shot. Or if you want to get aggressive, you can throw something a little faster and get it to skip around the corner here. You know, that's an aggressive shot. If you come in too early, you're stuck. You're not going to have any way to get to the basket. If you accidentally throw one too long, you're stuck. You won't have any way to get to the basket. It's a pretty specific shot. If you're laying up, you want to be, you know, somewhere right around these two trees. And if you're going to try to throw something that gets a little bit deeper and skips, you need it to come in right here between this tree and the opposite side of the fairway, these trees. You have to get it right through here. So it's a very specific landing shot. It's one of those the holes where you know, the first shot is probably shorter than the second shot, but once you get to that landing area, you kind of have this tunnel here. Again, a low shot. I think it probably plays better for a forehand. Coming through here, the basket is well guarded by all these trees. So if you can get a forehand coming through here and let it skip to the right after it gets past these trees, you should have a pretty good look at birdie. This is one of only two par fours on the course. This basket right here is hole 11's basket. That's the other par four. And your next tee box, hole 15, is right there. Hole 15, 284 feet, par 3, plays back up the hill. We're back to the too bright washed video instead of the dark one. And this one is pretty bad wash, so you can imagine how dark the other one was. Maybe if I'd have flown this thing 3 times, I would have finally got the video settings correct. But I'm telling you that camera is pretty bad on that drone. I'm not sure I could have got it right. Anyways, this hole does play uphill. It's a hyzer to the left. This branch right here creates a really nice low ceiling. The one thing I would recommend on this hole is if you're gonna miss, try to miss over here on the right hand side. This stuff on the left is nasty. Basically, if you get caught in this stuff right here, it's a natural OB, pretty much just pitching back out to the fairway. Also would like to mention that hole 16's tee box is right over here. So when you get done, you'll be able to find that. Yeah, just a nice hyzer around the corner here, uphill, plays way longer than 284 feet. Have these nice guardian trees right in front of the basket. That's hole 15. Hole 16, 262 feet, par 3. This one is a nice turnover shot or a forehand shot. Over here is hole 4's fairway, and these trees are plenty enough to keep you out of that fairway. But it's a nice turnover shot. This tree right here, or a forehand shot. This tree right here is the one you're trying to miss, and then when you miss this one, that one right there is waiting to grab you as well. But if you get a nice little turnover shot, you know, hopefully you can come in either through this gap or that gap. Pretty straightforward. It plays pretty true to its number, but it is tight enough, and there is enough trees here to maybe possibly cause you some problems. Hole 17 tee box is back over on the left hand side. It's a fairly good walk over to 17's tee box, and this basket right here is hole 2's basket. Hole 17, 400 foot par 3. We're back to using the washed out video. The dark one was just way too dark. I'm going to fly this one twice just so you can see both fairways. There's 2 fairways to be able to hit. 400 foot, pretty long hole, and it makes it even longer because there's some low ceilings here. You have to kind of get through this low ceiling, and then you get out to this open spot, and then there's another low ceiling when we get over here. The left-hand fairway is right here, and the right-hand fairway, which we're flying right now, is over here. So if you can get something around those trees right off the tee box, and then down inside this gap right here, you're doing pretty well. The center part, there's lots of trees, but usually even if you get over here, you'll have something that you can probably get out of. The road on the left-hand side will play as OB, and here's where it gets really washed. But if you can get something down this tunnel, you know, maybe land right here about circle's edge, or even get lucky and get a skip out towards the basket, you might have a good look at birdie. Hole 18's tee box is right here. This is one of the tougher holes on the course. Most people will probably be playing this one for a 3. All right, we're back on hole 17 again, 400 foot par 3. This time we're going to fly the left gap. Again, all you need to do off the tee is hit this gap right here. We are using the washed out video again, so it's going to get bad here in a second. Again, the road on the left-hand side is going to be OB, but just a pretty straight shot with either a big forehand or a lefty backhand. again, this middle part here is not too bad. This is the right fairway that we saw just a second ago. This fairway right here, and this is somewhat of a fairway. But hopefully with a big enough shot and a straight enough shot, you can get right down to this area, maybe right at C1 or somewhere pretty close. 400 foot, but the low ceiling definitely makes it play or seem longer than the actual distance. And once again, 18's tee box is right here. Hole 18, 265 feet, par 3. This one plays back up the hill. It doesn't look like it as much as it actually is. It's considerably uphill, so it plays way longer than the 265 would suggest. The road on the left-hand side will be OB. There is 2 fairways, and I'll fly them both for this one. The right-hand side is over here, pretty tight gap shot, tunnel shot, nice low ceiling. The right side is, I think, the harder of the 2 options, mainly because it's hard to get all the way to the basket. These trees right here will catch quite a few shots that even hit the gap. So it's hard to get up here inside C1. Hole 1's tee box is back up here, right here. Like I said, row plays OB on the left-hand side, and we'll fly the left side next. All right, hole 18, we'll fly the left-hand side this time. Again, 265 feet, way uphill, plays longer than that. But the left side is basically throwing something out over OB back inside. Again, the road plays OB and left. So either a forehand or a big turnover out here over the road back into the basket. Once again, that is hole 1's tee box. All right. Well, I want to thank you guys for watching the video. Hopefully, this is helpful to anybody who can't make it out before the tournament. Maybe you can see this and at least see some of the lines. Again, I want to assure everybody that the course will definitely be mowed before the tournament. Should be in really good condition.